Vriende, goeiemôre. Dis Maandag 31 Augustus. Ons is by Koffiekuiers 522. En as jy gewonder het waaroor ons hierdie week gaan praat, ek het tot gistermiddag toe nog steeds self ook eintlik gewonder wat ons moet doen. En ek en Jean-Marie sit gesels gistermiddag daar by skoenmakerskop waar ons sommer gaan eet het. En ons praat daaroor en ek sê vir ek weet regtig, ek sukkel half om te besluit waarmee ons hierdie week dan nou moet besig wees. En op die ou end kom ek af op 'n reeksie, kort reeksie van BibleProject se ouens, wat juis gaan oor die karakter van God. En terwyl ons gesels, praat ons daaroor en ek sê van, weet jy, dalk is dit die ding wat ons moet doen, want, en hoor nou mooi hoekom, ek weet nie van jou nie, ek weet ek self, worstel baie keer met, wie is God regtig? En hoe is God? Hoe tree God op? Want ons sit aan die een kant met hierdie vraag van, as God 'n God van liefde en genade is, dan wil ons vra, hoekom is daar soveel stikkend en seer in die lewe? Hoekom is daar soveel swaar kry in die lewe? Aan die ander kant kyk ons baie keer na dit wat bose en goddelose mense mee besig is en sê, maar as God 'n God is wat regverdig is en wat die sonde dan haat, hoe gebeur dit dat dit vir ons lyk asof die bose oorhand het in die lewe? En ek is seker daarvan, vriende, jy het ook al hierdie vraag gevra. En daarom het ek besluit om tog hierdie week, hierdie reeks met jou deur te gaan, wat regtig na aanleiding van Eksodus 34, eintlik so 'n bietjie gaan grawe en in 'n baie breër konteks oor die hele woord eintlik dan nou praat, maar oor wat is die karaktertrekke, die karaktereienskappe van God, en hoe kan ons daaroor dink? Nou die sleutelteks gaan oor Eksodus 34 vers 6 en 7, en dis daardie gedeelte waar Moses dan op die berg is, voordat hy die 10 gebooie kry, as die teken van die wil van God, en dan lees ons hierdie woorde in Eksodus 34 vers 6, terwyl hy by Moses verbygaan, dis nou God roep die Here en sê, ek, die Here, is die barmhartige en genadige God, lankmoedig en vol liefde en trou. So daar's eintlik so 5 karaktertrekke, 5 goed wat God self van homself vir Moses sê, wanneer hy openbaar. Barmhartig, genadig, lankmoedig, vol liefde en trou. En dis by hierdie tekste wat ek hierdie week bietjie wil stil staan, hierdie gedagtes wat eintlik van die hele woorde nou kom. En ek gaan nie baie daaroor praat, die vriende. Want die ouens by BibleProject het regtig verskriklike oulike video's gemaak, dis in Engels, maar ek weet jy kan Engels verstaan, waarin hulle eintlik hierdie tema baie mooi deurtrap met 'n goeie stuk verantwoordelike teologie rondom die opbou van die woord dan ook, en waar pas dit in en hoe werk dit ook. So ek gaan elke oggend die BibleProject video so intrek in my eie video, waar ek net so 'n bietjie inleidend ietsie sê, en dan vir jou los, om daarna te kyk, want dit is regtig, dit is vir my ongelooflik goed, hoe hierdie ouens die teks gebruik met binne die groter konteks van die woord dan ook. En die eerste gedeelte, waarna ons dan nou vanoggend ook gaan kyk, vertel eintlik so 'n bietjie meer van waar pas Eksodus 34 in, hoe dit gekom in die hele verhaal van God se betrokkenheid dan nou by die volk Israel, by mense, dat ons by Eksodus 34 gekom, waar hierdie paar woorde staan, en jy gaan nou kyk ook, jy sal sien in die video, Prof Bernard Kombrink, ons Nuwe Testament docent, sal baie trots wees op die ouens ook, wat regtig werk met 'n stukkie struktuuranalise om te sê, hoe pas die verskillende komponente van die teks dan nou in mekaar, maar die kort en die lank, soos my skoonpa altyd so gesê het is, ons gaan kyk hierdie week na die karakter van God, wat saamgevat word in hierdie 5 woorde, barmhartig, genadig, lankmoedig, vol liefde en getrou. En natuurlik, dit word ons nou in Engels op 'n manier anders gesê, maar jy gaan presies weet wat hier gebeur. Sit so 'n bietjie terug, fokus, let mooi op, en geniet saam met my ook hierdie verduideliking van hoe en waar pas die karakter van God rondom Eksodus 34 vers 6 en 7, en eintlik so 'n bietjie verder, hier tot by vers 9 se kant toe, laat ons dit kan met mekaar deel. Ek hoop dat jy dit geniet, vriende. Ek hoop dat jy 'n goeie, mooi Maandag het, vol beloftes, vol van God, die karaktervolle God se genade en sy liefde dan nou inderdaad, en dat wat jy ook al doen, dat jy dit sal doen tot eer van sy naam. Geniet die video en mooi loop. Ons kuier môreoggend weer verder saam.
The Bible is a collection of many ancient Israelite scrolls. And together, they're telling one unified story.
Now, if you look at the second scroll, Exodus, you'll find two important sentences. They're actually so important that they're referenced and re-quoted over 20 more times within the Bible itself.
It must be important. What does it say?
Yahweh, Yahweh, that's God's name, a God compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, overflowing with loyal love and faithfulness.
I can see why it's repeated so often. These attributes of God are really lovely.
And the statement goes on. He maintains loyal love for thousands, forgiving iniquity, transgression, and sin. Yet he won't declare innocent the guilty. He will bring the iniquities of the fathers upon the children and grandchildren to the third and the fourth.
Okay, hold on. This last part takes a bit of a turn. We're first talking about God's love, and suddenly it's about his judgment on grandkids. So, is God merciful or vengeful?
Yeah, great question. Let's see these words in a larger context by looking at something important in Genesis, the first scroll of the Bible. There, God chooses one family, the Israelites, from among the nations, and he promises that he's going to rescue the whole world through this family somehow.
And Genesis ends with the family of Abraham in Egypt.
Then the book of Exodus begins, and this book has two large movements.
Right, okay, so this first movement of Exodus, God rescues Israel from slavery in Egypt.
And in the second movement, God leads them to Mount Sinai, where they camp out for a year. And God invites this whole nation into a partnership called a covenant, so that they can be shaped by his values and character.
And represent God to all the other nations.
Exactly. Now, this whole Mount Sinai movement in Exodus can be broken up into 4 literary units. First, there's the actual ceremony where the Israelites agree to be God's partners. And God sets up the terms of the relationship, starting with the 10 commandments. The first 2 are,
don't give your allegiance to other gods, and don't make any idol images of God. Seems simple enough.
After that, God shows Moses detailed blueprints for building this sacred home so that God can come and live among them.
Oh, right, and then comes a really long narrative about the building of that sacred home.
But you missed something. Right in between these sections is the story that has our description about God's character. The story begins with Moses going up on the mountain, writing down the partner agreement, as the Israelites are at the base of the mountain, violating the first 2 commands.
That's ridiculous. They're breaking the covenant vows while the ceremony is still going on.
Yes. And so God is hurt and angry, and he warns Moses that this betrayal will keep on happening. God is ready to call it quits.
But what about his promise to rescue the world through them?
Yeah, exactly. This is what Moses brings up. And so, what is God going to do? Should he end the partnership, which would be fair?
Or will he be faithful to his promise to Abraham and show them mercy?
Yeah, exactly. Now, look back at the words that we began with, and you'll see they're about this very tension between God's mercy and his justice.
Okay, so the statement opens like this: a God compassionate and gracious.
In Hebrew, this line has 3 words that rhyme. El Rahum V'Chanun. And the line, overflowing with loyal love and faithfulness, matches the first, as it also has 3 Hebrew words. Rav Chesed V'Emet.
Each of those lines have 2 attributes of God, and they surround a 5th attribute, that God is slow to anger.
Right. Now, that's the first half of this description of God. Then comes the second half. God maintains loyal love for thousands. And how is he going to remain loyal to people who keep rebelling against him? By forgiving iniquity, transgression, and sin.
But God's forgiveness doesn't mean people can just do whatever they want.
Right. God's mercy is balanced in what follows. Yet he won't declare innocent the guilty. He'll bring the iniquities of the fathers upon the children and grandchildren to the third and the fourth.
The third and the fourth what?
Well, it's referring to generations of people who repeat their ancestors' rebellion against God. They'll get what they deserve. But notice, this small number of generations contrasts that massive number up above.
God's loyal love to thousands.
Right. And then check this out. God's forgiveness of iniquity in this line is contrasted with his justice on iniquity in this line.
Okay, and all those lines are surrounding a central line here about God's justice. He will not declare innocent the guilty. So while God is slow to anger, he is also just.
Right. This is the tension that these 2 sentences are exploring. How does a faithful and loyal God deal with such a rebellious people? This is the challenge God faces in this story, and it's the same challenge he faces in the whole biblical story as he works to rescue the world through this family.
With that in mind, we can take a closer look at these 5 attributes that God declares about himself to Moses. A God compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, overflowing with loyal love and faithfulness.
And we'll see how each one leads us deeper into the character of God and into the story of the Bible.